Hey, this is Sam from VIM. Today we're going to be talking about how to use VIM Enterprise from a BIM beginner's perspective to Power BI. So really the goal is to go from Revit into Power BI so that we can make customized reports that look for particular data, that validates our data, and so that we can exploit our data and share it with lots of people. So we'll assume at this point you've got a welcome email from our enterprise team along with a license. And you can basically get everything except the license by going on our website. So on our website, you can go into the docs, and the docs here, get started. This will actually be a location for learning if you want to learn about the VIM app, the VIM Enterprise app, or Power BI, and so forth. What we care about right now is the release notes. So in the release notes, there's always going to be three packages. The one that we care about is the VIM Enterprise installer package. So go on the release note or the link you've got in your email and download this install package. You'll need to unzip it into a new folder. So the first thing you'll need to do is install the VIM desktop app. This will install a exporter in Revit, as well as the VIM desktop app, which you can use to open VIM files really quickly and navigate them, as well as VIM Ultra. So VIM Ultra is going to be extremely important for showing those really large models and is basically as part of the VIM desktop app. So you need the VIM desktop app to be able to export a VIM. Now, secondly, you're going to install the VIM Enterprise app, and anytime there's an update, you need to install both of these as part of the update. So the VIM Enterprise app is what's going to allow you to convert a Revit file to a self-hosted database that you can then open in Power BI. Now, along with this, there's going to be a VIM Enterprise PDF that you can look for the introduction. There's going to be the new version of the VIM Viewer. So if ever you just want to update your template to have the latest VIM Viewer, you can go and say import a visual from a file, and it's going to replace your VIM Viewer. Like right now, we have version 95 in this, whereas here it's 95.02. So I could simply update the template with the latest viewer if there were bug fixes or improvements. And then finally, you should have a template for IFC files and a template for Revit files. So you're probably going to want to play with these templates to customize them to your needs, but basically you'll want to copy paste this and rename it after your company name and probably the type of audit or report that you're trying to do with this, as well as the project name. Now, there's three ways of using VIM Enterprise. The one we found to be most popular is the IT will set up a virtual machine that everybody can access. And so if there's a new project, they can just set it up in here or click run to update it or set up an update schedule. The second way to do it is to set it up on multiple machines where everybody kind of has the same data in there, but that's a bit harder to synchronize. And same thing, if everybody in the office has it, it's going to be a bit harder to make sure everybody's pointing at the right files if there's any kind of updates. So a virtual machine will just kind of centralize all the data at the same place. So we already have a project that is set up to look at Snowden. Let's look at this project setup real quick. So the first thing here we have is, where is the Revit file? That should be pretty easy. Now you want to point to the Revit file that has all of the links. All of the links in that file, in that 3D view, are going to come with the model. You also need to mention what's the name of the 3D view. So in this case, we made a dedicated 3D view called VIM, where all of the visualization is as it should. So we've specified what we want hidden or not, the work sets, the links to be on or off, and the primary design options, and so forth. One thing that's worth noting is if you want to do a 3D analysis of the grids, you'll need to go in the view here and manually select those grids so that you can bring in even more data like the angle and the length and so on. This will let you know if there's a grid that's slightly off axis or extremely long or extremely short. Okay, the third thing you'll need to put in is the point to the proper year of the Revit. So we already know this is a Revit 2024. So in here, for example, it's opening Revit 2026. I can go back, go to 2024 and click on revit.exe. And I've already got my first three fields. Right now, it's actually quite a small project. If we look at the export time, it's about 9 minutes, and we are exporting in default mode. If this was a very large project, we could export it in parallel mode. So for example, if it's 5 links, it'll open 5 instances of Revit, and export, and then merge really, really quickly those resulting VIM files as one single VIM file. So for a large project, try out the parallel processing. For small things, you can keep it to default. So by default, we are hiding any kind of dialogs from Revit. If you're finding it's crashing or some sort of plugin is showing errors, you can just say show dialogs, and then you'll have more of an idea of what's going on in Revit that could be blocking the export. Now, real quick, generally you're going to want to export the parameters, but parameters are often half of the database of the model. So if you want a really quick update with the geometry only, that's possible. The other thing is you can skip empty parameters. This will not let you audit where the empty parameters are, of course. So make that choice accordingly. The other thing is you can have a parameter allow list. So if you only care about 5 or 10 parameters and there's 3,000, you can just write down the allow list of the parameters to export, and that's going to speed up your export time by a lot. Now, you need to put a VIM file somewhere. It really doesn't matter. Generally, what I'll do is I'll put it along with the project document with the same name as the view I'm exporting. So here we have it right there, same name as the Revit model. So place the VIM file somewhere, and then the next two things to fill out are going to be basically coming from your IT. The Azure Blob storage is where the 3D model is going to be stored. So that's going to be generally always the same thing you're going to paste in there. And the database connection string, you're going to need a new one for every project. That's basically a secret key that allows VIM Enterprise to talk and create and modify a database that you've created with your IT department. So what you should do is, let's say you have 5 new projects, you call your IT or you send an email, say, hey, I have a new project, it's called Snowden R25. Can you create a database for me and send me the database connection string? So you're going to paste the Azure Blob storage, that's always the same, and your database connection string for that project, and you can quickly test if it's successful or not here. Now, once you've entered this information, everything else is going to auto-populate, and you can simply click Run to generate the database the first time or to refresh it. So in this case, I'm going to make sure that Revit is closed so it doesn't get confused. And I'm going to go ahead and click Run. So it's going to open Revit and start that extraction process. And what it's doing is creating an optimized version of the Revit file as a VIM file. And a VIM file is where the Revit geometry is optimized and all of the parameter data is in there. And it's an extremely efficient file format that we use throughout all of our products. Now, once that VIM file is created, it's going to convert it into a database, into a SQL database on your servers. And the last step will be pointing to that database and bringing that into Power BI into our actual report. So let's get started. Actually, what we've done here is we've copied one of our templates. Let's say, well, we're going to use the Revit file format. So here I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to rename this -Snowden R25. So I'm going to open this file that came from our basic template, and we're going to get ready to import the data that VIM Enterprise has created from the database. Now, because there's 2 steps to this process, there's really 2 aspects of the speed of the conversion. So one is how long does it take for the Revit file to become a VIM? And the second most important one is going to be how long does it take for the VIM to become a SQL database? And that's going to be based on the speed of your servers. So there's multiple levels of server speeds and costs. And so if you take the most economical server and you see that it's taking 20 minutes for a small file or longer or something that doesn't seem reasonable, well, you can ask your IT to put more resources to speed up that conversion if there's any kind of an urgency. Now, if you update your reports every Friday night at 5 p.m., obviously the speed of writing to that SQL database is not going to be important for the conversion. So in that case, it doesn't matter. But if you want the fastest conversion, if you want the number here to be as short as possible, you can ask your IT to basically pay more for the server speed that is processing all of that data. That's going to be generally where the bottleneck is going to be. Now, of course, the other one is already talked about it, is going to be the parallel process. So if you got a 20 gig model with 10, 20 files, well, parallel processing is going to make a huge difference. Just two things to keep in mind when you're doing the export and you're wondering about how long it takes to convert a project. Okay, so the project has been updated with the latest version of Revit, and basically I've opened my template here that I just created, and I've copy pasted this from the enterprise package, meaning it's an empty template. It doesn't matter if there's a project or not. When there's no project, everything's going to look empty like this. And what we want to do is take the information in yellow here at the bottom and start populating this into Power BI. So you're going to see here under transform data, data source settings, and if it's maximize, well, I guess it'll look the same. So you're going to open up your data source settings, and in here where it says empty, your database, you're going to say change the source. And the server here is going to be this information. So we're going to copy paste, and the database name is going to be right here. And I'm going to clear the permissions just so you see what the login looks like. So at this point, I can say close, and I'm going to click apply changes. So now it's going to point at this new database. And it's detected that it doesn't know who I am because I just cleared the permissions. So we don't want to log in with Windows. We don't want to log in with a Microsoft account. We want to log in with database credentials. So the database username is here. I'm going to copy paste this here, and I'm going to copy paste the password in here. And in this case, we still only have one data source, so we're going to apply it right there, and that should work. Now it's connecting to the database and is going to make all of these transformations. And if you've gone and you've made some intense modifications to the templates, it could be that it takes longer to ingest and rearrange all of this data. We're generally always updating the template so that it's faster, that it provides more information that's useful to you. So keep an eye on updates. Okay, so the load has been successful. Now, I will say maybe 2% of the time you'll get a really weird error during this process where it will get stuck. And, there's this whole other world called Power Query, which we access by going to transform data. So if ever it gets stuck for a reason that you don't understand, go into Power Query through the transform data button, wait till any of these pages load, and once it's loaded, you'll have the option here to refresh all, and then you can close and apply. So if ever you see this kind of nonsensical error, try this process and it should unlock you. The other thing too is if you've just went from one model to another in your template, you'll just need to switch the page one so that it reloads the model fresh. It could create a kind of graphical issue where it shows the old model and the new model all at once, but by simply changing one view to the other, it will be a lot faster. Now, while we're here, let's just talk about VIM Ultra real quick. So we're going to open the VIM app, and in the VIM app, there's going to be a VIM Ultra tab, and we're simply going to turn this on. And then when I change the view here, it's going to run it in VIM Ultra mode. So it's downloading the model the first time. So you probably saw that it was downloading it real quick. And then the next time it's loading it like this. This is not a large model, but basically what's happening is we are running the viewer in local mode. So instead of using WebGL, we're using VIM Ultra, and this allows it to run extremely large projects. So what that means is if you're going to be sharing this project, this report with multiple people, make sure that they install VIM desktop app and run VIM Ultra when they have large projects. And that way it won't need to download the model every time. It'll just download it once and then be much faster every time you change pages, as well as support extremely large files. So next video, we're going to look how to take a model from ACC, and after that, we'll look how to merge multiple models together through VIM Enterprise. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.